when I first got to Mozambique. I think the thing that stands out in my mind is that when we left for Salt Lake, well, first of all, our flight was delayed on the way to Mozambique. So, and that was our very first flight also from Salt Lake to Chicago, I think. So every flight after that was also delayed. So it ended up being like 3 whole days of traveling to get there. That's including nights and days and long hours in the airport. So so it was a really long flight to get there, or a series of flights, I guess. We went over to London and then down to South Africa and then to Mozambique. And as far as the first impression, I just remember flying from Johannesburg to Maputo, the capital of Mozambique. And as we were flying overhead, the plane started descending a little bit, and so we were all excited. I was lucky enough to have a window seat, so I remember just looking out the window and looking down, and just seeing just sand everywhere, and just the tin roof of all the houses, and I was just for that moment I was just like my jaw just dropped, and it was quite a culture shock to go there. And then of course we left, and the zone leaders and the AP came and picked us up, and as they drove us like the mission home and stuff, all of us were just kind of shocked looking out and seeing, because it's completely different. It's a very much a third world country. So coming from the United States, it's polar opposite. But yeah, it was pretty awesome. I guess one of the things about Mozambique is it's a Portuguese-speaking country in Africa, and I think that surprises a lot of people. A lot of people don't know that Portuguese is spoken in Africa, so that's probably one of the unique features about it. I've heard, I don't know if it's true. I think it must be true that it's the second furthest mission from Provo, with Madagascar being the very furthest away. So, and it makes sense, because if you go to the opposite side of the world, it's somewhere south of Madagascar. So Mozambique's a third world country. The church has been there for, don't quote me on it, but it seems like about 15 years, or at least the mission has been there for that long. The church has probably been there a little bit longer than that. So it's really new. The church is really new there. There's 2 districts, which is similar to a stake, but a smaller unit. But it's growing really well. It's a mission that it's a very high baptizing mission right now. And even in the time that I was there, I saw a lot of progress. So it's the work is really progressing very well. Of course, it's in Africa, and it's very much a third world country, kind of, I guess, your stereotypical Africa. But we spend most of our time in the city as opposed to the country. So, it's not like we were walking around with like the elephants the whole time, but we focused our efforts on where the people were, which is mostly in the city. Now that being said, of course, you see plenty of traditional Africa also, but that's really where we focus our efforts. And Mozambique is so much different than the United States, that it's literally, I think about it during my mission, and it's literally like an entirely different world. Like, I don't think there's any aspect of our lives that is like the same there. Like every part of the world around us is different. So just to describe, I guess, kind of Mozambique as a whole, as well as, I guess, kind of their lifestyle. It's a poor country, so it's very different. Mozambique as a whole is tropical. I think they call it tropical savanna. It kind of depends on the area of where you're at. Some places have mountains. Mostly, I'd say there's not too many mountains. It's pretty flat. It's kind of jungly, but not like rainforest jungle. It's kind of just like African jungle, I guess. Down south, it's a little bit little bit more like a desert in Maputo, a little bit more like a desert, not as dry as Utah, but it's not really densely vegetated. Now Mozambique, as far as describing what it's like and what the people live like, it varies a lot from the rural areas to the city. It varies greatly, as well as the social class. I would say I'd say the richer people there are like the very poorest here, or maybe even a little bit poorer. But of course, it's different. It's all relative. In the rural areas, it's very traditional lifestyle. A lot of people, depending on the area, they have different traditional methods of building houses. But I guess all throughout Mozambique, the poor people build their houses out of mud, which I guess is kind of cool. That's I think what people think of when they think of Africa. But there's lots of houses that are made out of mud. Just with sticks, and then they make a kind of a framework and then plaster it with mud. And on the top, a lot of the houses have what they call chapa, which is just like kind of a thin metal, kind of scrap metal, I guess, or maybe palm thatch in some areas, or I think grass even in some areas. Not so much where I was at, but maybe in other places. Otherwise, I guess kind of the little bit nicer houses are made out of homemade cinder blocks. So yeah, you see quite a bit of variance. The really nice houses are made out of nicer blocks, but still cement. No wood houses. What can I say? I'd say most Mozambicans have their own farms, or what they call them is mashambas. So these mashambas, they're not really farms. I say farm, they're not really farms though, but they're not really gardens. They're like in between kind of. So it's like, I guess, a really big garden, and they just have like, I guess, kind of a stereotypical hoe, and they bring it around and use that to do their gardening or farming, I guess, depending on what you want to call it. So they grow corn maybe, or rice, or mandioca, or just like other fruits. There's lots of mangoes there, pineapples, coconuts, and then a lot of other fruits that you've probably never even heard of. Let me see, what else can I say? It's, as far as transportation goes, almost everybody walks. So when you're walking out on the street, it's kind of different. When you walk on the street in America, you might pass a few people, but generally everybody goes in cars. So you don't really pass people, and people there in their house generally if they're at home. In Mozambique, it's different. You have, it's a completely different feeling there because you're literally amongst the people. Like, as you pass them, people, they prefer to be outside of their house instead of inside of their house because it's so small. So, you see people in the yard, you greet them, they greet you back. You greet the people as they're passing on the street. They're very friendly, so you get a very, a communal feeling. You really feel like you're like amongst them. I guess something kind of funny. Something you'll want to get used to. I guess that's kind of about the people. But something you'll want to get used to is getting called white or Mzungu. So I guess depending on the area, they have different words for it depending on what the local language is in that area. But down south they'll call you Mulungu. Further up north they call you Mzungu or Muzugu. Further up north in Kilimani, where I served. Or I can't remember what it is in Nampula. But yeah, in any case, they'll call you white. Oh, Vakani, that's what it is. No. In any case, I can't remember the word for white there. But everywhere you go, every day you'll get called white. Everybody will yell it out to you. Mzungu. they say it's not racist, so I mean, I guess you just have to take their word for it. And it's also mostly little kids that call you that. If you just accept that people are going to call you white and yell that out to you, then you'll be a lot better off. Like if you try to fight it, and if you know the whole mission, you think, oh, they're calling me racist names, then it'll make it hard for you. So just accept that you're going to get called white, accept that you're different, and just deal with it. Don't call them names back or anything. I mean, obviously as a missionary, that's not acceptable. The transportation for, I guess, larger distances is something called a shapa. For anybody that's paying attention, I guess that's the same name as the scrap metal on top of the house. Now, basically, so it's a van, and I guess you could say it's kind of a van made out of scrap metal. I don't know if it's called that for that reason, but basically it's just these beat up vans, and they cram them full of people. You know, once all the seats are full, then you have to stand in there and kind of just crouch over, and definitely not comfortable transportation, or convenient, but it's a fun adventure, I guess. They also have something called chopelas, which are kind of like motorized three-wheeled scooters, I guess. I don't know, not scooters, but there's a bench in the back that holds about 3 people, and then up front there's the driver, and then it has just the 3 wheels. And it's kind of covered, so it's just like this little carriage thing. And you can use that sometimes. Generally, those are a little bit more money though, so we don't use those as much as missionaries. In one area I served in Kilimani, which was probably one of my favorite areas. They had a really unique form of transportation. The city was a little bit too small to justify having these vans, or the shapas. So instead of that, they had something called bike taxis, which is just a bunch of people riding around on bikes all throughout the city, just independently, you know. And on the back of the bike, on the bike rack, they have a padded seat with, down underneath, they have metal pegs welded onto the bike. So, you know, you just go out to the street and kind of flag down two bike taxis, one for yourself, one for your companion. Hop up just behind the guy, you know, he's sitting right here and you're sitting behind him on this bike rack. And you'll tell him where you're going, he'll take you there, you pay him afterwards. Really unique, really fun actually. I really enjoyed riding on bike taxis because it's kind of just it's a really peaceful city, the city that has them, Kilimani. So it's really laid back and just kind of a truly African way of traveling. As far as the dress goes, I guess that's something that would be worth mentioning. The clothing. The men dress more or less like we dress here. Most of the clothes that they wear actually is donated from first world countries like America. So you'll see a lot of kind of DI clothing. I'd say it's probably about 95% of what they wear. Except for the women, the women may wear that for their shirts, but they don't wear pants traditionally. The women, maybe some of the more modern women do in the city, but for the most part, almost everybody in Mozambique wears something called a capalana, the women. And basically that's just a great big brightly colored cloth, usually with some cool African design. And they wrap it around their waist, kind of tuck it in like you would with a towel, I guess. And so it's just kind of like a long skirt. And that's cool. I guess it's kind of traditional African clothing. Almost all of the women wear that. You'll see that everywhere. Also, the women use that for the same piece of cloth, the capalana. They use it for a lot of other stuff. Like, for example, their babies. They'll always bring their babies with them wherever they go. And so they'll just wrap it up like a, what do you call it, sling, I guess. It's basically just like a sling. So they'll wrap their baby like that and have the baby on their back, or they can pull them forward to feed them and put them back or wherever. as far as the people go, the Mozambican people are just extremely special. Like, I love them a lot. Um, they, I guess, speaking as a whole, they're, obviously every person is different, but I guess speaking as a whole, they're um, very simple, very very happy people. Um, they're very friendly, very nice, and especially to the missionaries, they have a lot of respect for the missionaries, and they'll open their homes to you, and no one will turn you down if you ask if you want to visit them. Very very few people will actually turn you down. Everybody is honored to have you visit them. Now, whether they accept the gospel or accept the commitments you extend to them and actually do them, that's kind of a different issue. But they're very special, very kind people. They very humble also. I saw very few, mostly because I would classify as prideful. They're very humble and very hardworking. One of the things that I liked a lot about the Mozambican culture, as opposed to maybe the American culture, is they had less of a focus on the materialistic things of life. So to them the biggest thing wasn't making the most money or getting a nice car or getting a car, period. But they focus a lot more on, I'd say, the things that are valuable. I guess the more eternal things of life. Now, of course, every culture is different, and so there's a lot of things that you will definitely see there that you may find a little bit disturbing as coming from a different culture. For the American missionaries, I guess. So, for example, a lot of times you see fights in public, or even people just yelling and just having yelling matches at each other. That's not uncommon to see. In particular, there's I think a lot more domestic violence than what you would see in at least than what meets the eye in a more developed country. One event I remember in particular, it was early in the morning, and me and the other missionaries, there's 3 other missionaries, all of the missionaries that were in our house, and we were going to do a service project. So we left with a member to go do the service project, and it required walking a few miles. So we were walking out to this guy's house, and up ahead I saw some people on the street, and the woman had her hand kind of wrapped around the husband's shirt, kind of like she was trying to stop him from going or something. It seemed a little bit out of the normal, but I didn't think much of it, until we got up closer, and I realized that it was an argument that they were having. He probably wanted to go, and she wanted an explanation for something, why he wasn't home last night or something, I don't know. And in any case, next thing we realized, he was hitting her and kicking her, and really, it was, I don't want to go into a lot of detail about it, because it was just completely, he was beating her basically in public, just there in their yard. And I remember seeing that and just kind of my jaw dropping. I just didn't realize that was a situation I would encounter, and I noticed that nobody else was really doing anything. I think a lot of everybody, not just Mozambicans, I think everybody's a little bit afraid to involve themselves into such a violent situation. They're afraid of what will happen to them. Does he have a knife? Like, will he get mad and whatever? So I think there's a natural tendency to just keep on walking and let somebody else deal with it. But it took a lot of. I was scared to do it, but I guess I kind of made a decision then that I have to I can't let that happen, and really I felt the responsibility, to help this lady. So I went over, yelled, stop, and after after the ice was broken, then other people came, the neighbors and everybody else, and kind of settled the situation, I guess. And we just left. But I guess my advice that can go along with that is, as a missionary, don't have courage in everything you do. Like you have to have courage in what you say, as well as what you do. So you'll definitely have chances, but whether it's something that dramatic, it may or may not be, but you'll definitely have chances to stand up for, the sanctity of womanhood, or whatever it may be, respecting women. And so my advice would be to just to be courageous, and to don't worry about what's going to happen to you. You won't, you're not going to be killed or anything. Like, just be courageous, and if something needs to be said, if something needs to be done, do it. I remember another occasion, kind of a little bit of a different story, but it was my very first day in a particular area. So me and my companion were walking to our area, and we came about a roundabout. There's lots of roundabouts in Mozambique, because it used to be Portuguese owned, so I guess it's kind of European style. In any case, in this roundabout, there was kind of grass in the middle, and we noticed the guy that was laying there, and he was just unconscious. He was laying there, and we'd seen that he was throwing up blood, and he was kind of just laying there, just kind of, I guess, subconscious. And there's lots of drunk people, even laying in the streets, but to the point where we're throwing up blood, I'd never seen that before. So we, I guess once again, it's that same temptation to just pretend like you didn't see it, or tell yourself there's nothing you can do about it, and just keep on walking. And I think my companion and I may have even taken a few steps, kind of started walking away, and then I just kind of, I guess the story of the Good Samaritan came to my mind, and I realized, you can't just leave this man. I don't know what shape he's in. Maybe he's already dead. Maybe he's dying. You don't know. So we went back and we stopped, and we tried to stop some people to see if we could use their phone, or if they had the number of the hospital or anything. But nobody really seemed. I guess it's that same thing. Everybody just doesn't want to involve, like, what if this, what if that. In any case, what we ended up doing is we just ended up walking to a hospital nearby, and they told us they would go and pick him up. So when he came back, he was gone. So I assume they did. But I'm not sure if we handled that the best way we could have. But as a missionary in Mozambique, you come into a lot of situations where you are actually tried for what you believe, and you're actually tested to see if you actually will act in a particular way that you think you will beforehand. So I guess my advice to a potential missionary or a prospective missionary to Mozambique would be decide what you stand for, and decide that you will act, and that you won't let your fears get in the way of doing the right thing at all times, in whatever that may be. You probably won't see a whole lot of wild animals in Mozambique. They supposedly, back in the day, it was one of the best places for wild animals. Elephants, giraffe, zebra, whatever. But Mozambique, during I think leading up into the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken, I think it ended in 92. The Civil War. They gained their independence in 1975, and then shortly after that they had a very long, over 10 years, I can't remember exactly how many years, but over 10 years they had a very long, bloody civil war. And during this time they actually killed off all of the animals, or not all of them, but a lot of the animals, to feed the troops. And then of course poaching, there's lots of poaching. So you probably won't see a whole lot of wild animals. They do exist, but you probably won't see a whole lot. Monkeys, though, you see monkeys. Maybe not every day, but you'll probably see monkeys. We saw crocodiles. Went to a place and saw crocodiles. Buffalo. I didn't see any zebras or giraffes. Didn't see any elephants or lions. I guess like smaller animals, you see geckos everywhere. Like almost any house you live in, I can almost guarantee you there'll be geckos that live there and just scamper around on the ceiling. Chameleons. I guess the funny thing about chameleons is, they're harmless, but the Mozambicans, almost all of them, are scared to death of chameleons. Like they think that they're poisonous and that their spit will kill you, and that maybe I think a lot of them think that they have like magical powers and stuff. So that's kind of a funny cultural detail. But they're harmless and they're really cool actually. So you'll probably see chameleons a few times on your mission also. I'm trying to think what else. Mice. I think most of the houses I lived in had mice get in at least a few times. Not a whole lot though. Cockroaches, I guess, if that counts. The food in Mozambique is pretty simple. There's not a whole lot of really extravagant stuff, eating weird parts of the animal and stuff like that. Not a whole lot of that. It's pretty simple. It's kind of hard to describe the food because it's just completely different from anything that we eat. Of course, as missionaries, we're allowed to go to the grocery store, which most Mozambicans don't, but we do. And so the missionaries generally eat a little bit different than most people do on a day-to-day basis. But of course, as a missionary, you have plenty of chances to try the food they eat as well. So almost all of Mozambican meals, I'd say probably 95% of Mozambican meals, consist of rice or something called shima. So shima is just it's like ground up corn flour, and they boil it with water until it gets really hard, really firm, and you can grab it with your hands. And but they don't eat that alone. They always have something with it. So that can be fried fish. Sometimes they fry up small fish like that big. Or they have lots of like greens. So they have something called matapa, which is mandioca, or manioc, I guess in English, manioc leaves. And they mash that up and they cook it with coconut milk. A lot of the dishes have coconut milk in it. Also pumpkin leaves, they did the same thing with that. Something else called couve, which I'm not sure what it is in English. I've heard it's collard greens that's cut up and then mashed. And they prepare all that. So generally speaking, that's called a Creole. And they put that on top of the rice or shima. The way they typically prepare it is they have something called a pilão, which is just it's like a hollowed out tree trunk kind of. So just like a big mortar and pestle. And so they put the food in there and then they mash it up with a great big stick. And then they cook it, they boil it for a long time. And it's good. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's got coconut milk in it, so it's got a pretty mild flavor. It's really tasty. If you go to a restaurant, they'll almost always have chicken. So they have like fried chicken and usually rice, maybe potatoes on the side with a salad. It's pretty simple, but it's really good. The food's great. They also have a lot of food that you can buy on the street, kind of like snacks and stuff. All over they have that. Now we ate that quite a bit when I was there. I'm not sure. Maybe they're discouraging now. I think towards the end they're kind of discouraging us buying it for sanitary reasons. So I'm not sure what the rules are right now. But they have one of the common foods is something called shamusa. So it's just a little triangle that has like just this really thin fried bread or fried crust, I guess, with potatoes on the inside, or sometimes they have fish on the inside. Then they have bolinhos, which are just like little fried, like kind of like donut holes, except for not as sweet. And I mean, lots. Like I could go on. There's lots of stuff you can buy on the street, but mostly just like little snacks and stuff. The only thing I can think of that was really strange that I ate was sometimes they cook with chicken feet. That's it's not super common, but it's not uncommon either. And I had that once. So it was kind of like I guess almost a chili that they put on top of the rice, and there's just chicken feet in there. And it wasn't. I'm not gonna say it was like the best food I've ever had, but it wasn't bad either. Like the flavor was fine. It's just a little bit chewy. There's not a whole lot of meat on chicken legs though, or the chicken feet. So it's just gives it flavor, I guess. Something else, we just cooked it as missionaries. No one else cooked it, but we bought on the street hammerhead shark. Cooked that up and ate it. That one was really good. Stingray. That one wasn't very good. That was kind of gross, but it's a little bit different. It's they say it's based off of the continental Portuguese, which is the Portuguese they speak in Portugal. There's definitely influence from Brazilian Portuguese as well, though. So it's kind of its own unique thing. I think it'd be a very, I guess, similar analogy would be American English as opposed to British English, as opposed to African English that they would speak in South Africa or Nigeria or something. So same thing with Brazilian Portuguese as opposed to Portugal Portuguese, as opposed to Mozambican Portuguese or Angolan. So it's I mean, I'd say it's somewhere in between Brazilian and Portugal Portuguese. I guess an example of that would be like the name of the church. In Mozambique, they'd say A Igreja de Jesus Cristo dos Santos dos Últimos Dias. In Brazil, with my best Brazilian accent, it would be A Igreja de Jesus Cristo dos Santos dos Últimos Dias. So they kind of have that G in there, like o livro de Mormon, which is the Book of Mormon, as opposed to o livro de Mormon. So it's unique. Mozambican speak slowly generally, so it's usually pretty easy to understand them. The accent varies a little bit depending on where you go throughout the country, but not a lot. I would say though, as far as when you're talking about the language of Mozambique, you can't just talk about Portuguese, because there's actually many, probably over 15 major, I say major, but 15 other significantly spoken languages in Mozambique. So most people speak their own native language, or their traditional African language. They call them dialects. And then they also speak Portuguese, which they learn in school. So almost everybody usually is bilingual, speaking both of those languages. So it's actually kind of helpful, because a lot of the people you'll teach also learned Portuguese as a second language. So I mean, they sympathize with you. They're really patient with any mistakes in speaking Portuguese. They'll speak slowly, so it's easy for you to understand. So as far as that goes, it's nice. You'll hear lots of other languages though. Anywhere you go in Mozambique, you'll hear just in the street, especially in the more rural areas, you'll even find people that don't even speak Portuguese. So, I mean, there's lots of linguistic variety in Mozambique. I mean, I think most missionaries learned at least some greetings. I'm kind of interested in linguistics, so for me, I mean, every area was just almost like a different language, So for me, it was kind of fun. I tried to learn as much as I could of all the languages. Now, I never got to the point where I really spoke it fluently. Maybe I could say, simple things in some of the languages. But I never got, we never taught lessons or had church in those languages. It was always in Portuguese. Down south, where there's a lot of missionaries in the city, Maputo, they speak Xangana or Ronga. Shangana and Orong are almost the same languages. They're very similar, and in the city they're mixed. So it's almost like a hybrid of those two. I guess some of the things they say there is like Wahanya. That's just like, how are you? Literally it means, are you living or are you alive? And then to respond to that, you say Nahanya Kwatsi, like, I'm living well. And so that's kind of unique. Down south, the languages have a unique sound, which is that sh sound. It's like kind of a whistle. So, like a word that we liked as missionaries was that shoshi, which means now. So, yeah, that's down south. And then where I spent most of my mission in Beta, which is about halfway up, they speak Indao and Sena, those two languages. They're both spoken in the city. They're not particularly similar to each other. So just depending on what neighborhood you're in, you'll run into people who speak, more predominantly Indao or more predominantly Sena. Indao has lots of hard sounds, so it's like it's got like zh sounds, and I'm trying to think of some other things I can say. Like Marikerua, that's Sena. That's like good evening. Yeah, I mean, it's been a while. It's been about a year since I've spoken anything of this. So I couldn't say a whole lot, but yeah. Then there's other languages for the North Makua, Lomwe, Shona. I can't even remember all of them. There's lots though. There's lots of languages. As far as the safety of Mozambique, like I said, it's a third world country, so I mean there's lots of poverty there, and as you expect, there's definitely crime that goes along with that. An interesting thing though is there's no like hate-based crime. It's all, there's no organized gangs or anything like that. It's all just to get things. It's not drugs. Also, there's very very little of that. Now, of course, alcohol. There's people generally drink quite a bit. You see lots of drunk people, but it's all in all, I'd say it's a pretty safe place to walk in. I never, or very rarely on my mission, did I feel unsafe walking out and about on the streets. Even at night, I felt pretty safe. Now, that being said, whenever you leave your house or at night, you always have to make sure your house is very very well secured. So all of the houses in Mozambique have metal bars on the windows and the doors, or around the porches. So you have to make sure, they call it grade. You have to make sure that's always locked up. Yeah, the time that we got broken into though, my companion and I, we were sleeping because of bunk bed, and he woke me up and said that he thought he heard someone at the door. He thought someone was breaking in, and at the time he was kind of sick, so I thought, he's probably just kind of delirious or something. He's probably just bad dreams or something. But just to humor him, I went with him to the door, and he brought this bat with him. I guess just self-defense or whatever. Okay, so he went into the kitchen, and that's kind of the way we got into our house, is through the porch, which is where the bars were, and then we just walked through the kitchen into the rest of the house. So he walked to the kitchen and peeked through the door, and he whispered to me that he thought he saw something, and so eventually he starts hitting the door with the bat and just yelling, "Saidaki!" So I mean, it's just like get out of here, leave. So he starts yelling that, and by this time I still kind of think that he's imagining it, So I go around to another room and peek through the window to where I can see the porch, And I remember looking out into the porch, and it was a rainy day, so it was all wet outside. And I remember seeing on the dry porch a wet footprint, bare footprint. And then kind of my heart sunk. I realized that we actually had someone breaking into our house. So I grabbed a hammer, and then everybody in the apartment, there was 6 of us, 6 missionaries in that apartment, so everybody got up, and we were yelling out the window, and Mbava, that's kind of just in the dialect it means thief. So that's kind of the tradition. You yell out thief, and then the neighbors are supposed to come out and help you. They didn't, but in any case, we were yelling at it, and we were all too scared to go outside the house, So we were just standing there, with everyone with bats or pieces of metal or whatever we could find. And in any case, we finally got the courage to open up the door and go outside into the porch and see what had happened. And sure enough, we had the metal door, or the bars to the porch. There was 2 locks on that, 2 padlocks. With a crowbar or something, they had broken both of them. And they were breaking the door that went into the actual house. The only thing that stopped them from getting in is we had a kind of a metal plate or a metal bar that we fastened behind the door. And that's kind of just like the last line of defense. And that was the only thing that was stopping them from getting in. They were working on opening that up when we woke up, so that was kind of frightening. But other than that, I didn't have any other issues. So yeah, it's you have to you have to just remember that there's people who will take your stuff. So whoever gets called to Mozambique, the Mozambique Maputo mission is a very lucky person, very lucky missionary. For me, I know it was the perfect mission, and there's nowhere else that I would have rather served. I guess the primary focus of the mission, at least when I left, was on teaching and baptizing families. So, I guess as a prospective missionary, my advice to you would be go there, planning on teaching and baptizing a lot of people, and believing that you can, and that the Lord is preparing people for you there. Missionary work is never easy. It's always a lot of work, and even though it's relatively high baptizing, it takes a lot of work to find those people and to teach them and to help them through, whether it's preparing to get married so that they can get baptized or whatever it may be. It's a lot of work, but I know that the Lord has His hand in the work in Mozambique, and that He's working miracles there. And I feel very blessed to have been a missionary, and to have been an instrument in His hands. And I know that the church is true. I've seen miracles in Mozambique, and I know that the growth of the church and the miracles that are happening in the personal lives of the people there has been an amazing blessing to my life. I can truly say that it's something that's changed my life forever, changed who I am, and changed the way I see the world. So believe that Lord has people prepared for you. So for anybody that's going there, go there, be obedient, work hard, listen to the mission president and follow him. And I know the Lord will bless you. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.